Reader response criticism is the last literary theory that you are going to cover this term. So great job working through all of these. I hope that you found each one engaging and interesting and fun for you to use. I'm sure perhaps you've come to find one or two or even three that you prefer over the others. So you may come to find that you like this one as well. So reader response is essentially what it sounds like. It's a reader's response to a text. So on the right-hand side over here, I have kind of a communication triangle, if you will. Reader response, and I guess literary theory would, equate to the triangle, and then there are three main elements to any given text that you use literary theory to understand. You've got the reader, you've got the text itself, and you've got the writer of the text. So of course, reader response criticism puts the reader at the pinnacle of the triangle, and really this triangle relates to all of the theories that you've covered so far. So the new critics or the formalists focus only on the text. To them, there is no triangle. There is only the text, and that is it. And it's really interesting when you read and you study these different literary theories, because the new critics just seem to attack and tear down the other theories because they believe that the text is the center of everything. Then you've got the writer over here, and the writer could perhaps represent psychoanalytic criticism, where the psychology of the writer is being analyzed, even though, psychoanalytic theory could also be applied to the text and the subconscious and the conscious of the characters. You could even look at the psychology of the reader. You've got historicism, new historicism, which focuses on the text and its historical meaning and how perhaps the writer is bringing that history to light through the text. So again, all of the theories relate to this triangle in some way. So again, at this time, we're going to be focusing for the first time on what the reader brings to the table. So what exactly is reader response criticism? Very basically, it's just how the reader responds. That's where it gets the title. But it's how the reader responds to a work. So it's the reader who carries the meaning, not simply the text, not the writer and the message or the literary elements that they're bringing through the text, but simply the meaning is carried within the reader, and the reader finds that meaning as they read the text itself. So it's important to note too that there are various types of reader. It's not just you sitting down and looking at a literary work, but how do you relate to that work? How do you relate to that time? How do you relate to the author? So on and so forth. So I've got a list here of different kinds of readers. This is not necessarily a conclusive list, nor do you need to know every single type of reader that a theorist can come up with. But these just help you understand how different readers look at a text differently. So you've got the actual reader, or the person who's actually reading the text. That could just very much be you. The ideal reader is someone who is best equipped to read it. So someone who understands the language, perhaps. Think of poetry. If you're not trained in poetry, it's really hard to understand it and to analyze it. So think about an ideal reader as someone who is educated enough and well aware of what's going on in order to read and understand. You've also got the implied reader who the story is addressing. If you think of some stories, they literally address you. Think of Moby Dick. The very first line of that novel is, "Call me Ishmael." That is a direct statement to the reader. Is that the implied reader? Is it the actual reader? It depends on how you analyze it. You also have real readers, and these readers have actually had their responses to a text recorded by theorists. So more than likely, you're not a real reader. There's a virtual reader who the writer sees themselves as addressing. You've got super readers, so people who are very well trained in linguistics, literature, and aesthetics. I don't think I'd even consider myself a super reader. Maybe folks with doctorates and who spend years and years studying literature and language would be considered a super reader. The historical reader, I think, would be a very interesting analysis to conduct. It's a person who reads the work within the age that the text was written. So a reader of Chaucer back in the Middle Ages, when Chaucer was actually living and his works were actually being created, would be a very different reader from, say, today. So perhaps think of Hemingway, who wrote at the beginning of the 20th century. Think of how a historical reader reading Hemingway compared to yourself, how your analyses would differ. There are also resisting and critical readers, people who oppose whatever it is that's being written, as well as people who want to tear it down and interrogate it and tear it apart. So these are all just different types of readers, different contexts in which people are reading, different mindsets and different levels of intelligence that people bring to a reading. It all creates a different type of reader. How you read a work and how I read a work are going to be very different. How I read a work and how my husband reads a work are going to be very different. So each person brings a very specific set of knowledge and experience to a reading. So that's what the types of readers goes into. Excuse me. All right, had to get a drink of water there. Okay, so again, I'm not really concerned about you understanding all the different types of readers. Just know that just saying a reader is very general and very vague, and there are many different types of readers based on many different types of elements. All right, so within reader response, how a person approaches a text is obviously very different, but also the meaning that they come across within a text is very different as well. How they discover the text or the meaning that's within it differs very much. It's also the critics who created this view discovery as a step-by-step process as opposed to just a one-time thing. So you discover as you read and you discover as you learn. So again, it's a step-by-step thing. There are also varying levels to meaning. You could look at a text literally, you could look at a text allegorically, and so on and so forth. So you can get deeper and deeper with the levels of meaning as you approach a text. So keep that in mind as well. Also, significance comes to play in reader response in that the meaning that you find within a text may not change, but how that meaning is significant to you can change. As we progress through life, as we go to school, as we experience things, that very much affects us in how we see the message within a text affecting us. I hope that made sense. So the significance of meaning changes. So let me give you an example. My favorite novel is called Catherine. It's historical fiction by Anya Seton, and it was written in the Middle Ages. Shocker. But it was a book that my mom gave me. It was one of her favorite books as well. And she gave it to me in, I believe, in middle school or early high school. And since then, I have just been absolutely drawn to that time period. It is the reason that I focused on medieval literature in grad school. It's the reason I want to get my PhD in medieval literature. So it is an extremely significant book in my life. So what I can do is I can look at how I read that book, say in high school, and how I just loved the love story, and that I could relate with the characters, and that I just enjoyed it, and then carry that through to now when I have a greater understanding of the history, a greater understanding of the culture and of the context. And Catherine was actually the sister-in-law to Chaucer, and I spent a lot of time studying Chaucer in grad school, so now I can see, all those different elements going on within it. So the meaning of the book for me has really not changed, but the significance of it has. I've been able to find different levels of meaning, and my discovery of the meaning in that novel has taken quite some time. I read it, at least once every year or two. And it's an emotional roller coaster. My husband has to prepare himself because it's a very powerful book, and I love it that much that it just, it drives me crazy. It's great. But again, I have discovered the meaning that I have found in it. It's got varying levels based on, what I've learned and what I've experienced in life. And that significance of that novel has just increased since I read it for the very first time. So that's how meaning and significance work in a text toward reader response. There are also 3 different types of reader response theory. Again, I'm not really concerned with you knowing these. This is just FYI, if you will. So the individualist is more probably what you're going to be doing in this course. It's just how an individual uses his or her experiences when reading a text, and that each person who reads something recreates that text because of their experience or their perspective or their mindset. So it's mostly what you're going to be working with. There are also the experimenters, and they believe that the traditional values and beliefs of a reader are actually forgotten during reading, and then the possibilities of what is real and physics, things like that, are suspended. So think about Harry Potter. If you've read the Harry Potter series, and if you enjoyed the Harry Potter series, you can, I'm guessing that more than likely you don't believe that magic is true, and that you don't believe that dragons and pygmy puffs truly exist. But when you read that story, you suspend what is real and the possibility of what is real, and you just become a part of that story. Think also of books where the bad guy is actually a hero, and how you can overlook those immoral traits of that character and want them to win. It works with movies and TV shows too. If you watch any, let's see here, Prison Break. Prison Break was a TV show where, they're all convicted felons and they're all trying to escape prison, yet you root for them. So the experimenters look at how our values and morals are set aside when we're looking at a text. The uniformists focus not on how the reader necessarily controls the text and creates meaning through the text, but also how the text controls the reader. So think of how, I guess the individualists focus on how an individual approaches a book and finds meaning. The uniformists look at how a text encourage a reader to read it in a certain way. So it may contain certain literary elements or certain themes and ideas that most readers would, recognize, and most readers would react to in a similar way. So hopefully that makes sense. So those are just different types of reader response theory, should you be interested in looking further. So I do have several cautions that I want to present to you related to reader response theory. First and foremost, I would really caution you against over-personalizing this theory. Some reader response theorists might slap me on the hand and say, no, it's all about the reader and their experience. However, you have to do it in an academic and in a professional, theoretical kind of way. You cannot let your experiences and your knowledge and what you know to be your opinions overshadow what you see happening in the text. You can't let it take over everything. Sometimes I think students look at reader response and say, oh, well, I can just, analyze anything I want because I'm the reader and what I say goes. That's not necessarily true. You absolutely have to substantiate your claims with support from the text. So you could say, You can have an opinion, but I caution you away from stating it as an opinion, just as you've done all quarter long, or all semester long, excuse me. But you have to support your argument and your ideas and your interpretation with work from the text. Again, I think that sometimes reader response can tell students that, oh, so long as you think it's true, then it's true. Yes and no. You have to be able to prove that it's true. So, in order to risk not doing that, don't over-personalize. So make sure that you always back up your claims, give lots of support from the text, and be really solid in the point you're trying to make, and don't over-personalize it. Also, don't be really limited in your scope of what you're analyzing. Look at the text as a whole. Don't just get tunnel visioned on one aspect, again, because of personal experience. So as you work with this theory, this might start to make sense, but again, don't let your experience overshadow your ability to work with a text. Sometimes, for example, say you read a poem and it's about racism, and it's really upsetting and offensive, but it's offensive for a purpose. Do not let your personal feelings and opinions and beliefs overshadow the benefits of that poem. I'm hoping this makes sense. So those are just my cautions with it. To me, not all interpretations are created equal. That doesn't mean that a smaller, more personalized interpretation is bad necessarily, but interpretations that are really well supported, that really look deeply into the text, are just going to be of higher quality than those that are just skimming the surface. This is my opinion, this is my reaction, things like that. Don't react, think, analyze, just like you've done all quarter. Don't get caught up on, oh, well, I'm the reader, I can say whatever I want. Again, that is not necessarily true. You've got to support your ideas, make sure your ideas are really insightful, just like with all the theories that you've worked with. So I hope you enjoy working with it. If you have any questions, just let me know.